All right, welcome back to the Winnipeg Weight Loss Show. I think it's episode 25. Don't quote me on that. I haven't really been keeping track, but I do put it in the show notes. So if it's not 25, you'll see it there. So I have a special guest today. It's not just me talking to myself, which has been kind of the case for the last few episodes. So I'm excited to kind of share the volume with Rhyland, who is a fellow strength coach in Winnipeg, and it's rare to connect with Winnipeggers in our little virtual bubble here. I think we actually met in Nashville. We may actually talk about how that came about. But Rhyland just finished up a bodybuilding show, placed well, 3 medals, I believe.
Actually,
So
four. I got 4.
Four medals. Okay,
Yeah.
wow. Okay, yeah. So we're gonna get into what made that successful compared to previous shows he's done in the past, and there should be some actionable takeaways. Whether you're prepping for a show or not, if you're looking for weight loss, you're in the right place for the next 30 minutes. So welcome, Ryland.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be on the show. Super excited.
Absolutely. So we met in Nashville, I believe, which is funny being from Winnipeg, but we were both part of a mentorship group with Vince Del Monte. And I think we spent a half day together, went and found some barbecue and had a little walk down Broadway, I believe it is the main drag there. So interestingly enough, what was your
Yeah.
highlight?
Well, I actually think what it was really cool was like you had reached out in the group initially and, getting in that online fitness group, 300 some odd online fitness coaches. And you're like, hey, I'm from Winnipeg too. And so that's kind of where we really synced up. We officially met in Nashville, and that was really cool. So it's great to have other people, and especially people like yourself that have been in the online fitness industry for so long. And I'm still only like a few years into it. And so it's really cool to get, to connect to someone like you so I can continue to learn. So like I say, I'm pumped to be on the show and just to get to meet you was really helpful for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I get a lot of energy from giving back, right? You've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations. Someone that can save a few errors through learning from you is the value in that. That's why I have mentorships, and that's why we have fitness clients all the same, right? It saves you a lot of steps if you have someone to kind of guide you along the path for sure. So, what got you into the industry though in the first place? Obviously, you've been an in-person coach for quite a while now. I think we have a similar backstory, kind of chubby kid who wasn't naturally inclined for fitness, didn't come out of the womb with a six pack. So, what led to you indirectly getting into this in the first place?
Yeah, you nailed it. So yeah, just growing up a chubby kid and then always having self-conscious issues. I initially actually wanted to be a carpenter, but when I was actually in the industry of construction, it was a miserable industry, a lot of angry old people in there. And meanwhile, I was still pursuing fitness, and especially in the realm of boxing. I was getting into fitness, and I didn't want to be like a vain guy and go all the way to that end, but I knew it was about my character and it was part of my confidence. But then boxing seemed like this utility of both self-defense and confidence and getting a good aesthetic. So as I was getting into boxing, I still remember this guy who was setting up, he was doing construction for my parents in the basement, setting up a bag. He's like, boxing will change you, in an accent. And he just told me all these crazy stories. And like, man, I wanted to not make me chubby. But then sure enough, while I was in construction, I was boxing. I was like really into it. I was just so obsessed with it. And then I was training a friend of mine. He was training with me. And then eventually I just did my workouts some more and training him. And I'm like, man, I could be paid to do this. And I'd do this for free any day. So that was literally the day I recognized it. It was just like, wow, this is fun. This is rewarding. And then from there, got into, kinesiology, got into nutrition, and, eventually found the online space.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway. Find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I don't know if that's the exact quote, but when you find your thing, you kind of know it, right? And I was sort of the same way where I went the safe path, got my degree in communications, and fitness is always kind of beckoning. Oh, I don't know if that's a safe career path, but it eventually forced me into it because it's all I thought about and all I really researched. And where I put all my investment of time, money, and energy was into that field, not the one I was so supposedly supposed to be in. So roundabout way, we ended up there. Awesome. So boxing, right? I remember you saying that you still dabble in that a little bit, but how did it transition to more powerlifting, bodybuilding, and when did you kind of make that shift?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was pretty passionate about boxing. It's still a huge passion of mine. Like, I'd even look back at, I was really passionate about hockey at a younger age, but
Mhm.
I was 10 times more passionate in boxing because it made me a passionate person. It made me much more involved because you're not just showing up to kind of hopefully play well for a team. It's like, if you don't show up, you're getting hit, you're getting rocked. And it just, yeah, it just inspired me so much to get out of my old lazy ways, because I was a lazier kid than I realized. And I didn't have as much passion in all these efforts in school and all that stuff before. So right up until really injuries and career took over. So I was really into boxing. I was in it for about, on and off competitive for, I'd say, about 5 to 6 years. I had 7 competitive bouts, 1 exhibition, and, I got pretty good skill in it. I had a lot of passion for coaching. I never wanted to necessarily say I'm going to be the world's greatest champ, but I knew I could compete against some very high level competitors. There were some awesome boxing coaches and awesome competitors that I held toe to toe against very well in the ring. But then I dealt with a lot of injuries and shoulders. And I mean, during that whole period, I was going to school for training to be a kinesiologist, because I knew that was going to be my forte. I was naturally good and inclined for strength. And then while I was doing my kinesiology, I also realized, oh man, it's not just about what you train, it's what we eat. So there's not a lot of overlap in kinesiology and nutrition. So I'm like, I'm just going to get a second degree in nutrition. So I was doing that in the process right after I finished my kin degree. And then from there, it was just more efficient to do lifting and kind of more bodybuilding workouts. Like, you have to be so well conditioned constantly when you're a boxer. Like, it's just hard.
Mhm.
And even now I have issues in my shoulder and in my knee that like really even pull me from doing just the training. And I love the training itself. It's an amazing training even without getting hit or hitting another person. But that's really been probably one of the main things that sidelined me. And then years later, even when trying to go back to like spar some clients, I had this one guy who was weighed a fair bit less than me. And I knew I had some mild concussions back in the day, and he hit me again. And it was a hard hit, but like, you're 50 pounds less than me, you shouldn't be able to give me a concussion. So
Mhm.
then, as I age, I'm like, maybe I don't need to go back to the sport fully, but as long as I can come back and spar my clients here and there, which actually last Friday I sparred one of my old clients, and so I can still swing with them and I can still keep in there. But the powerlifting, bodybuilding, all that stuff is just, it's so easy to fit into lifestyle. Boxing can, but it's a life. Like, you really obsess over it. So that's how I kind of evolved.
Got it. Yeah. So lifting's well, for aesthetics, of course, but the longevity, life benefits of that. That's really why I do it now. As I approach 40, it's focused a little differently than it used to be. But all the same, you still challenge yourself. You still lift heavy weight where possible because it's fun. But I could see
Absolutely.
getting punched in the head would the novelty of that would wear off a little bit to some degree.
Oh
Nice.
yeah.
So take us back to you did a show how many years ago? A handful, 4 or 5 years ago?
4 years ago.
4 years ago. Okay. So what made you decide to do it again?
It's a great question. Well, actually, that day. So first off, I went into that show as a one and done. Part of me, and I always talk to one of my other friends who's really in fitness, like, you just kind of got to do one. He's like, you don't have to in fitness. But the person that I realized I kind of got to experience it. I was always afraid of it because of the far end of vanity and, the body dysmorphia and all these psychological issues that can come with it. And I never felt like I needed to be that lean, because I held more character or more value to my character than I did all of my aesthetics. Even from like day one of getting in fitness, I said I always want to have more character than my aesthetics do. And so I was afraid that would push too much into it. Now, when I actually went through this evolution, you realize it's all about testing your character. And there's a great deal of people who actually just value it for that. Not, there are certainly douchey people that are all about their aesthetics, and it creates a superiority complex. But those people actually just suffer from massive body dysmorphia and other issues. There's far more great people in it than anything else. But then what was really big was, I thought I had some natural size and aesthetics that were going to carry me through it more than I even wanted to admit. I didn't pose that well, and I didn't realize how much that made a factor. So that day, 4 years ago, when I didn't think I was going to get first or second, because those guys were actually, on PEDs. I was doing an open show. The third guy, though, wasn't bigger than me, a little leaner, but he wasn't bigger than me. And I had a better aesthetic in my opinion, but I had no posing, and I didn't realize how big of a difference it was. So when I heard my name called for fourth place, I almost froze on stage. And I almost never freeze and things like that. And I was like, whoa. And so I was so disappointed that I got last place. That day on the drive over to like the restaurant for our celebration dinner, I was like putting on a smile to see everyone after. I was so mad. I was so disappointed.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden that day, I was just like, well, you look at what you didn't do. You didn't pose. You didn't take it serious enough. You didn't build. You just kind of participated, and that's what you got. You got a participation trophy. And so if you really think that like you deserve more, you got to go at it, and you know you can accomplish it. Like within that drive, I'm like, I got to do it again. And I actually even looked at all these other things that I'd done on that day. I looked at like I'd done a half marathon at one point. It was around just over 2 hours. I had done a full marathon at one point. And I started to look at all these different things. And I'm like, do them all again and show that you can do better. Because it's not that you have to be the best in the competition all the time. That's not always like some people have this. I got to be the best, got to be the best. But my best I needed to bring to the stage better. And I have proof, right? Of like, okay, well, that wasn't your best. And so when I came back into this one, it was a matter of, I'm definitely going to do better, but I did come in with that attitude of like, I want to be the best I possibly can on stage. And so that's kind of what evolved it. Now, just what made it this year specifically, I would just say psychological timing. Like I knew I'd built more size over the years. And I remember, so I was doing some powerlifting with a coach last summer, and she just had me doing so much volume that I'm like, if I'm not eating more calories, this is almost like a waste of volume to me, right?
Mm.
So I was starting to build a little bit more. And then I could just tell that my knee, which I've been dealing with for an issue for like since COVID hit, so it's like 3 years, I could just tell it wasn't going to get ready enough for a competition for powerlifting in the next year, but I craved a competition. And
Mm.
so, literally September 12th or something like that, I released on social media. I'm like, I'm going to do a bodybuilding show. I knew I was going to finish up with this coach in the fall, and then I was going to shift gears just to building. And it was right for where I was at psychologically. It was going to help my business to be able to tell a story. And that's what actually led me to the stage this last spring.
Perfect. No, that's a great way of putting it. Helps me explain. I guess there were some COVID delays too, but if you had the injury, that was part of it. Okay, helpful. So what was different this time? Like obviously you got some professionals in your corner for posing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you had a prep coach as well. With
Yeah.
yeah.
So I had a posing coach, and then I also had a training nutrition coach. Now the training nutrition coach was my same coach as last time, AJ Zeglin, but we were much more active in the process. Before, he was just more of a mentor. He would chat with me. I would meet with him. I would text him. He's my former boss, so we're really friends now. And so when I reach out to him, but he's also really busy. And so what I made a point of doing is like, I know you do not want to accept payment. I'm paying you. And even if it's, something simple, I have to pay you. So we're both accountable to this process. Now, I also knew that as much as he loves the posing, I could still go see him for posing. But between like with True North, he's got 2 kids, like it was going to be hard for me to always go see him and all that stuff. So I reached out for a separate posing coach, but we met at least every other week, sometimes weekly, for talking about training nutrition. And the thing I loved working with him was he would be someone that we could explore similar ideas with, but give me the final choice. Because I would just be like, maybe this, maybe that, and be like, just go with this. And for the most part, though, when I had some things that, I kind of believe in, some other people might not, we are actually on the same values and same belief system. So it was really helpful. And then, with my posing coach, she had some other practices that maybe I wouldn't do as much. But my posing coach was still really helpful, pushed us to even, he would always talk nutrition with me. He would always be like, how's the nutrition going? How's the dieting going? And he's the one who said, hey, bring up your lats, bring up your hamstrings. So he was really helpful for that. So having that huge accountability structure was big. Having a plan to build was so substantial. Like I went into the first cut within a month of just saying, it was funny because I met my girlfriend. It was like a third date, and she just seemed so interested in me doing bodybuilding show initially. And I was like, whoa, maybe in this like 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, maybe I should do one. And then that's what sparked it. But no build phase. So the build phase this time was over 4 months. So I had way more muscle. I was doing a
Mm,
lot of volume. So that gives you a lot of tissue just to work with to begin with.
yes. Yeah.
And then like with all that accountability and all that. Now, the other major thing was we didn't just slash calories. Okay. We cut calories, but previously last show, we didn't really come in with like a, let's figure out what your metabolic rate is. Let's figure out, I just used AJ's old diet plan structure, which was basically have your body weight and protein, have under 90 grams of carbs a day, and the rest of your fats might come from your meat. Now it was about it. And then so we did 6 meals a day, which was the old bodybuilding approach that you thought you needed 6 meals a day, which is no metabolic advantage now. So this time I was 3 to 4 meals, started off with 3 because I found them more satiating for the longest time, even kind of windowed eating most days. I went for 2,000 calories. After about a day or two, I adapted to it pretty well. And I gave myself 17 weeks for this prep. Last time it was about 13. So give yourself more than enough time. Now, the first 3 months were a very healthy practice. The only other, like I trained 5 days a week for strength. I had that solid calorie intake, a higher protein intake, probably closer to about 250 grams average. So it's protein leveraging, make sure you get rid of your satiety, muscle sparing. And the other major thing was no cardio. Now, if I wanted to hop on a piece of cardio equipment because I want to watch TV to get my steps in, I would do it. But my knee could not, I just want to be careful on it. For some reason, my knee can handle walking a normal pattern outside, a normal gait pattern. But as soon as you go on a treadmill, you do kind of a fixed position on your joints, it just starts getting aggravated. Now I can do it. And I did it in the last month because I had to, but to do it for 4 months, I knew it wasn't going to be very manageable. So those are the main tools that when anyone is curious about my cut, it's like, I did a high step count, a minimum 14K steps, which is a lot, but you can actually fit it in within your life. Like I was parking farther from grocery stores. One of the major things that I love doing and I have today was if I'm in a boxing class, I'm teaching a boxing class, at least at that point I had 2 that I was teaching. I walk around my participants like crazy. And what does that look like? It looks like a very active, very excited, motivated coach. So it made me a better coach. And I would be like so pumped up after. I was like, tell my girlfriend she coaches with me. I'll be like, okay, I just got 5K steps. That was awesome. And so it's really cool when you start to realize activity can fit in your life when you have this tangible goal. So that's probably one of the most helpful things. Like I say that a step counting watch is your best metabolic tool.
Absolutely. So I just want to summarize what you did. So this was the first 3 months. You pretty much had a standard diet plan, 2,000 calories. You did front load, your protein was higher than the average person would probably be able to hit at 250 grams a day. But
yes,
there's still some lessons to be learned from that. It filled you up. Step count of 14,000 plus, 5 strength workouts, right? I'm sure you prioritize sleep. Otherwise, those are the basics, and that was the foundation. Got it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So all those things are pretty doable, I would think, for anyone listening to this that may be doing a few things from that list, but not all. But if they would incorporate all 4 of those, I would suspect they could ride that all the way to as lean as they want to be. Now it's getting as lean as you got for the show. What were the things you did kind of after that initial phase to kind of really dial in the last month or 2 months, I guess it would have been?
Yeah. And I mean, I was still making fat loss progress. The thing is, you get into metabolic adaptation at that point. So if maybe it was a 20-week cut, I could have kept doing a lot of the same stuff. Maybe didn't have to turn to cardio, all that stuff. But at that point, 5 weeks out, you kind of got to hammer down and see if you're not afraid of losing muscle mass at this point, because you'll lose less. You're going to lose some, but it's just so much more important to get lean for the stage. So the first thing was bringing the calories down. Now, it was really interesting going back between my posing coach and my training nutrition coach, between AJ and Brett, because Brett, the posing coach, was like, he's a prep coach. He's ruthless with calories. Like, yeah, I'll slash him. People can handle it. Like, you can really handle it within a shorter window. You can manage and you'll get through it as long as you have protein high and just the right amount of calories. So he was telling me to go as low as 1,400 calories. And I came from, remember my old maintenance was like 27 to 3,000. So he was getting me to go, like, considering going low. Now I knew I was ready to go down a bit. So I went down to about 1,800 just to see how I'd feel. And I think AJ's experience previously from seeing someone else cut too hard, too fast, and they didn't get a good result, he's always apprehensive. But we basically just eased the calories down as, you know, AJ felt like we could manage. I went from 18 to 1650. And eventually for the last, I think 2 to 3 weeks, we did 1400 calories. Then we also gradually, we started with a higher step count, went from 1400 to 1600. And then it was like, you know, still modest gains. So we just basically said, it's going to be more time efficient just to do cardio, because stepping, like just going for walks, brisk walks, doesn't burn that many calories in the amount of time that you're going for. So we basically said, as long as you have 12K steps, which is still good output, but I do about a half hour of cardio or more, which is usually when, if I was doing it, I was doing 35 to 45, you're going to burn more calories, right? So the good thing about cardio is it's just more efficient to burn calories. And I still would hit a target heart rate zone that wouldn't deplete my carbs too much. You hear some other bodybuilders, they were like doing 150 beats per minute, 160. I'm like, Jesus, like that's your carbs you need for your strength training. Like I'm not trying to do that, right? Systemic. And arguably I could have gotten leaner. Like it's amazing how no matter how lean you get, you're like, you could be leaner. It's kind of ridiculous, right? But yeah, so as I basically just push those levers harder and harder. And initially, like I say, we just eased into more steps. Then we did cardio, bringing the calories down more, started doing a little bit more cardio, kept the calories low for the last couple of weeks. And then even in that last little bit, I had Brett, opposing coach, say like, maybe you do some HIIT, you're going to burn more calories. And again, I was so apprehensive of like systemic for volume, or like not ruining my system. But in the last little day, I remember the day before we were actually, whether or not we are going to go back to carb loading, I did like a HIIT circuit, minute on, minute off at 1200 calories, 1250 calories. So once I had adjusted to those calories, I could just hammer down. And, you're just so used to everything feeling like shit. Like I didn't put that focal point here. As soon as I went below my BMR, which is somewhere around 1800 calories, maybe 1700 calories, I swear your body knows it. And everything gets increasingly hard. Getting up and down out of chairs, picking things up and down. I would even get headaches until my body started to adjust. And so, your sleep goes down, mood for everything goes down. I remember going for long walks. And if there's this one point where there's a couple who I think was 80 years old, I was excited that I could pass them. Like I was like, at least I can get past these 80-year-olds. I'm not that bad. And then I extended this walk that was supposed to be an hour to an hour and a half. I'm like, I got this. And then once I got past the 60-minute mark, I'm like, oh my God, this was such a mistake. Like that's how exhausting everything was. But like I mentioned, more than anything, it's not about aesthetics at that point. It's just character. Can you push?
Yeah, I think that's great that you touched on how you felt there, because a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm gonna cut the calories as low as possible and add cardio and try to rush this process because it led to good results." But there's some very major trade-offs there, right? And if you didn't have a show at a set date, you probably wouldn't have gone down that road, right? To add the extra cardio, lose some muscle potentially. And then you've got guys on PEDs who can probably cut calories and maintain more muscle during that process and not suffer quite the same fate as you did. So, but in the end, it earns you 4 medals, right? So for your purposes, everything you did worked out perfectly. But for those listening who aren't prepping for a show, I'll preface and say probably not worth going down those extra steps.
Absolutely, especially when it comes to cardio. I think cardio could have a time and place if you need an efficient way to just have a higher metabolic output. I totally get that. But start with steps. And like I had mentioned, I haven't changed that right now. Even in my reverse diet right now, I'm trying to ease back in the process. And bear in mind too, at that 3-month mark, I had a good physique. I actually could have walked away from that right then and there.
Yep.
As I got leaner and leaner, it was it's just for stage purposes. It was not I didn't even like my physique significantly more other than for the event that I was doing. And the walks actually were so good for my mental health. I actually started to realize I was more focused getting into work, because I'll go for a walk in the morning, and I recommend everyone start with a morning walk. I go for a walk in the morning. I'm more because I no distractions, just outdoor walking first thing in the morning. It could be 20 minutes, it could be 45 minutes. You think about your day, and you will come in with a better mood and attitude because you're already starting to process what you need to. When I started doing my morning cardios, but I don't want to cardio, I want to be distracted, right? So I would put on a
Mhm.
podcast, I'd watch TV, and then I come in and I'd start my day. I'm like, fuck, I don't even know what I'm doing. And so it was just so much more like those walks are huge for mental health and then end of the day, digest your thoughts, go through things. So the walking is one thing I'm an advocate for. And if someone just doesn't have that much time, they only got like 20 minutes, then I get it. Toss in 20, 30 minutes, you're going to burn more calories. But the step counting is by far probably one of the biggest impacts that I had in that whole routine. One last thing, and I know because you want tangible things. I
Mhm.
personally, no, not everyone's this way, but I personally changed my relationship with food through this process by including a treat meal every single week and
Mhm.
fitting it in my calories. Now that could be once a week or twice a week, but I fit it in my calories. And it was about mindful eating. I would share it with my girlfriend. We would share a treat or a dessert. Sometimes we even make a home cooked meal that was kind of not the typical meal type, but we really, really enjoyed. And what was incredible was I wasn't even craving them like crazy. Like I could see an O. Henry bar on my prep and be like, yeah, I had one yesterday. Like it's not a big deal to me, which is huge because last time I literally binged chocolate bars that day of the show because I thought
Mhm.
it was okay to have. It was just like a guy coming out of rehab having his first shot of cocaine. Like it was
Yeah.
crazy how big of an issue I had. Now I'm actually with a better, healthier relationship with those foods. But I had to have a very systematic approach to it. I had to eat it mindfully, not distracted in front of TV. And I had to have that point of accountability for the prep in order to know, okay, well, I can't have any more than this. So that was one other tidbit that is completely changed my relationship with food and the whole routine.
That's a good point too, because I mean, flexible dieting to a point works for the average person, and everyone has their kryptonite foods that they can't moderate. But it's a lot healthier strategy for the average person to have a little bit of a budget in your calories for treats, whether it's once a week or even a nightly thing, right? I think that's a good message to put out there. Is it can fit the conventional diet. You can still get really lean without, abolishing everything you love in that respect. And I do really like the morning walks piece because I know a lot of us, mainline caffeine, that's our unnatural high to start the day, when actually a walk would probably give you a lot of clarity. So when you do get to sit down at the work computer, you know that tasks have already been kind of problem solved in your head. And for me with young kids, I tend to try to rush some work before the chaos of the morning, getting them prepared for school. But even a 10-minute walk, I think I'm going to try to make a consistent habit because I do generally do that in the afternoon. I come back to my work refreshed. So I think an additional one would serve me well. Awesome, Rhyland. Anything else that people can take away from your experience who may not be prepping for shows but still desire weight loss and want to do it in a sustainable way?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'll just a couple that like it took me a while to come back to kind of some of the bodybuilding culture things that I now agree with a lot more. One is meal planning and prepping, like having things cooked ahead of time is priceless when you're busy. You described your kids like I was pre-cooking my breakfast, pre-cooking my afternoon meals and stuff. If I knew I had time, then I would have the meat and all that prepared and I could eat it that and then have that cooked for the next couple of days. But for sure, meal prepping and planning was like so worth it for me, just for then I could do my job more. Like, I mean, I'm like yourself, I work from home, but I didn't want to spend all this time cooking every single day. I want to be as efficient as I want my clients to be. That was a major one. And, you can alter those diets. Like you talk about flexible dieting, that just means like have flexibility within that structure. Even I had different meal plans every 2 to 3 weeks, but similar structure, which was the major thing. And even now, I have comparable calories, and that's my next part is like the reverse diet to ease into it. But like I just know how to make that structure fit, a new palate, new choice of foods. But then I would stick to the foods that are high satiety that I enjoy because I still think any meal plan should be standardized for enjoyment. And then, like I was going to say, is just whether you need to take a diet break or reverse to a maintenance, imperative that you understand that your diet is your diet. It's not necessarily a purchase that you're making online. You're an organism that has a consistent eating pattern, and you can evolve that, but don't let it disappear. You know, if you put in 12 weeks of hard training or whatever, I did 16 weeks, like all those are habits that you're structuring. That's what it is. It's habit training. And so to evolve that at like a higher calorie intake so that you can enjoy it. And so that's why flexible dieting was a huge part of it, because now I'm not saying, oh, I need to binge, right? Because I still enjoy my food. And so now you just do it at a slightly higher calorie intake. I actually keep my step count really high because I really like that. And I'll bring that down to a more sustainable one in the next month or two. But even then, I just enjoy those walks. I enjoy being active. So if there's two major things there, it's planning, having your structure, like plan, cook ahead of time as often as you can, have your structure, understand that structure has flexibility in it. And then you're going to want to use that structure after your diet, and consider diet breaks. If you have a long way to go, like if you got 20, 40, 50 pounds to lose, do a little diet break and then continue that progress, because it is a long game. Like, I mean, I'm lucky that I was able to lose 40 pounds in the amount of time I did because I had the time, right? Not a lot of people can get those kind of results that quick.
For sure. Yeah. The exit strategy is often overlooked. People can diet down 20 pounds in 90 days and then they go back to their old ways and it rebounds just as quickly. And we won't get into the topic of reverse dieting, but where can they find you to follow you? Because I know you're kind of walking through your process of coming off of that prep and not gaining all the weight back like you did the first time. And I think there'd be some value in that as well. So on Instagram, I guess, the main hub.
Yeah, main one is Instagram at RQ Training Nutrition. I'm also on YouTube, RQ Training Nutrition, on TikTok, and then they can also check out my podcast itself, Strong Ambition Podcast, as I talk a lot of it on there. And I'm doing a lot of podcast episodes on the bodybuilding with the different coaches I had, and kind of reviewing one with one of the competitors I had. So there'll be a lot of info on there as well.
Beautiful. And yeah, I'd like to put in the show notes some of the magic ways you use egg whites and oats to make crepes and pancakes. I've seen different things.
Oh yeah.
So if you can
I
send
actually, I gotta brag about this because last night I was literally baking for like 3 or 4 hours.
Wow.
I make eggs and oats burger buns. And so like, yeah, I literally had it. And so it's like a low calorie, well, moderately low calorie for the bun, but it's high protein. It's like 50% protein. And then you put burger on there. It worked out. Like this morning, I had like an egg on my burger and it was like 500 calories, 50 grams of protein, and it's delicious.
And it looks and tastes like a cheeseburger. There you go, guys. So
Yeah.
if you get a little creative, we'll definitely rely on your creative juices and steal some of those recipes and put them in the show notes for everyone that tuned in. But I appreciate you jumping on. We'll see you Thursday, right? We got our
You betcha.
dinner party.
See you Thursday.
Cheers. Have a good one.